Hello, and welcome back to the Cineskinny. It is the film podcast from the Skinny magazine. It's Peter and Jamie.
Hello.
Because we are recording an introduction to a piece of content that we've already recorded. Isn't that correct, Jamie?
It is, thankfully.
Yes. We'll just explain to people what it is. So we hosted with Queer Cinema Sundays at the Glasgow Film Theatre a very, very good screening of Nowhere, Gregg Araki's 1997 nihilistic teen drama thing. It's got aliens. It's got a lot of shagging. It was a wild ride, wasn't it, Jamie?
If it's hard to explain what it is, maybe you should listen to the next half hour and that will explain more.
Well, see, that is actually just a very, very good introduction to what's about to happen. After the screening, we had a kind of chat, a classic bit of the pod about Gregg Araki's work, about the film itself, about potential spin-off ideas from Nowhere.
Ellie called us old because we remember the 90s. Old.
I called Anahit a pervert. We had a live captioner as well. Shout out Gail on the live captions.
Gail must have been working overtime. Like, we talk quite fast. Like, imagine typing all this out.
I definitely looked. So I was looking across the panel at the caption board, and there was definitely moments when Gail thought better of it. I started typing, and I was just like, "No, this literally isn't worth my time." That's a good, concise bit of caption work there.
We should ask for the transcript.
I don't think we want the transcript. Anyway, so what you're about to hear was a conversation that we had at the Glasgow Film Theatre this weekend. Thank you again to Rosie from Queer Cinema Sundays and to the GFT for having us, and to everyone who came out. It was actually quite a good turnout, wasn't it, Jamie?
It was a really good turnout. Really cool audience.
Good bunch of lads.
Yeah.
Just a good time.
Good vibes.
And you'll find out just how good after this music bit of Christ alive, Jamie. It's been too long of a week.
It has. And it's distracting because one of our colleagues is on a sales call.
One of our colleagues is on a sales call. The door was open a minute. Let's all go. Anyway, Gregg Araki made a film called Nowhere, and then about 30 years later, we had the following discussion, which you are about to hear. We'll be back with a normal episode in 2 weeks' time. I can't believe this has taken me 2 minutes and 15 seconds. My God. Feel free to work on this in the edit, Jim.
Well.
Right, anyway, here we are. Goodbye. Well, what a day it was. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching that. That was... we will get into what that was. So I'm Peter, this is Jamie, Anahit, and Ellie. We do the Cineskinny podcast. And when we do the podcast, we talk about films, and we often are kind of like, the themes and all this kind of... pattern. We will get into that. We're going to talk about, the history of new queer cinema and, what this means as a film of the 90s. But I want to come to you first, Anahit, as someone who hasn't seen this film before. What do you reckon to all that, eh? What about all that?
Yeah, what about all that? I thought it was a better Alien film than Disclosure Day. That's like my main feeling so far, is it did that better. Kafka could never, when he turned into the little bug. That was I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, I thought it was really good. I really, really liked it. I've never seen a Gregg Araki film before. Yes, I am a professional film critic, but I've never seen a Gregg Araki film before. I always thought they'd be a lot more, I don't know, dour almost, but it was actually really silly and fun. I think one of the best films I've ever seen on what it feels like internally to be a teenager versus what it actually is to be a teenager. What it actually is to be a teenager is Bo Burnham's 8th grade, where everything is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you and everything makes you want to die. But inside, you feel like you're horny all the time, like you're being funny all the time, like everything's possible, but also everything is the end of the fucking world. And I thought it did such a good job of showing that kind of heightened reality that kids live in, and that, God bless, I imagine none of us live in anymore.
Well, I wanted to come to Ellie next, because Ellie, this film came out in 1997, and
right.
You were born in the year of...
1998.
So a different perspective.
Yeah, I don't really remember the 90s as well as you do. So my question for my elders is... Was that really how it was? Did that really happen? That was the vibe?
I was 7, so that was not my...
Fewer aliens.
Fewer aliens, fewer handjobs, yeah, for the best, I feel, all around. Was that how it was?
I was probably about 15. Unfortunately, fewer hand jobs also. I grew up in 1990s Ayrshire, so that wasn't our life. But I guess TV looked like that. Like all the things I was watching on TV, like I think Gregg Araki calls it Beverly Hills 90210 on acid. So like he is kind of like taking the piss out of like high school movies and Buffy, and like that's the kind of, we did watch films with like people who were pretending to be teens who were like much older, who are like much more confident and having sex and stuff.
It is I think you're onto something. I think it is probably more 90s than the 90s itself was. Like I think when I think about this film, the thing that it reminds me most of is probably Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, because for the same kind of reason that he wanted to take Romeo and Juliet and put it in an MTV music video. And like you say, this is Beverly Hills 90210 on acid. So it's like directors who are really like taking the 90s media landscape, because that's sort of more of a reflection of how people see themselves, and kind of like utilizing that visual language when you're competing with like soap operas and reality TV and music videos and stuff like that. Like that's what I think of the 90s. It's like when it really came into full force, when there was this huge market of media that was all like desperate for your attention.
Yeah, I suppose that leads me very nicely on to what I want to talk to Jamie about next, because I often come to you in these situations, Jamie, to give us a bit of context. He's our context guy, because he knows a load of stuff, and then I just make vague assertions about things that have happened. Obviously, Gregg Araki really associated with new queer cinema, but can you maybe just talk a little bit about sort of, I mean, Ellie's kind of hinted at it already, but like what the sort of kind of origin story for that new queer cinema movement was, and how it's like what it was in reaction to, and what kind of elements come up in other films by Gregg Araki and other directors of his ilk.
Yeah, it was cited in like 1992 by a critic called B. Ruby Rich, and she was recognizing there was a lot of like really angry, like creative queer films out there. You know, films like The Living End, Poison by Todd Haynes, My Own Private Idaho. So, but these films were like kind of reacting against like the Bush years and earlier the Reagan years that had kind of like completely ignored the AIDS crisis. And like, I think that was like what the kind of big change was, that these films were kind of angrier and punkier and more DIY, and they were different. Like, you know, we had queer cinema before new queer cinema, but it was much more kind of like about repression and about like coming out, and you know, this is what this film's not about. You know, these like characters are queer and they're having sex. You know, like that was the kind of difference. I think it was like queer films made for queer people. You know, it wasn't like queer films that were trying to like appease a kind of more mainstream straight audience. You know, like they were kind of definitely trying to be like push the boundaries and sort of say something. You know, very political. Yeah,
and I think that's something that we kind of, when we had a chat beforehand, I think it was maybe you, Jamie, that said that it is a queer film in kind of all different senses, because obviously like in terms of topic, and a lot of the characters are queer characters, but also it has a very kind of like non-conventional sort of like queered structure. There isn't really like a main character. There's not necessarily a huge like narrative through line to it. The first 15 minutes, I would say, was like when you're on a video game character select screen, and as you scroll down, everyone's little 20 seconds of like, it's just constantly scrolling through. And yeah, I think that kind of like, it plays a lot with like different, like unconventional aesthetics, him wanking in that endless bathroom while the credits come in on various Windows Movie Maker-esque angles was also a real joy. And so I think it does have that kind of like element to it, but I suppose, like you've told us a bit about like what this was kind of like in reaction to. I think watching that film with the aliens, the fear of apocalypse, him saying at the very end, you know, I think my generation's doomed in this, the year of our Lord, 1997. I think it might all be over. And it was like, so close by, just off by a couple of generations. It's very much a film of the kind of 1990s, like milieu, aliens, apocalypse, religious.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on then, but like I think we did all kind of think that the world was going to end in the millennium. I don't know why that was, but like there was that kind of fear. Like, and you had like X-Files on the telly. Like there was something in the air with like this kind of the end of the world was coming. I think that was like in there somewhere, and that's definitely Gregg Araki. He comes back to that a lot in his later films, even after the millennium. So it's definitely also, I would say, not just a queer nuclear cinema thing. It's like Gregg Araki was clearly obsessed with like the Rapture or something. He's like, he has a boy from LA. That's gonna, if you're living in a city with like earthquakes and Scientology, maybe this is what the result says.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's like that was all in the mix. And like I would say like, the thing about the nuclear cinema, like none of these guys really talk to each other, guys and girls, never talk to each other. So like I don't think you would say the films are actually the same. It's more that the attitude is the same. It's like not giving a fuck anymore, and they want to say something was what kind of, I think, joins them together. So like this film does not look like Poison at all, but they do have the same kind of punky attitude.
Yeah, and I suppose Ellie, obviously you're looking at it from a slightly different generational lens from the rest of us. When you see something like that, and then you think about more recent queer cinema, like what elements of this do you feel have kind of been carried forward, and what things have we maybe kind of left in the past?
Good question. Yeah, like the fact that it's very much revolving around, like I say, I was sort of like interested in the media of it. That's the only way that I experienced the 90s, and it is very much in communication with the media. And I think having a little bit of a commentary in there on how, like, I don't know, this moment where these two characters who are having like the absolute, like this terrible time are connected by this random thing they find on TV. And it's like one of the most emotional scenes in the film, and it lures you in, and they have no idea that they're connected by that. And it's so wonderful. And when I think about queer cinema now, I would say that like at Cannes this year, Jane Schoenbrun's new one, Death and Teenage Sex at Camp Miasma, Schoenbrun's work with I Saw the TV Glow and We're All Going to the World's Fair has always been about media and the kind of like the way in which people connect with media, even if they're like very far apart, via the internet or via TV or something like that, and how it has this transformative effect that brings you together. So I would say that that's something that holds over. But the kind of thing that you're talking about a little bit earlier, about that this isn't just a film with queer characters, it has like a queer form, a queer structure to it, then I don't know, I'm also thinking, if anybody is familiar with Castration Movie by Louise Weird, that's like an incredibly sort of, I don't know, nebulous film project that's going into its third part now, and it goes on for like 9 hours or something like that. And it's very kind of, is anthological the right word? Like kind of following all these completely different characters who are seemingly unrelated and exploring these concepts through all those different lenses. So I would say that it wouldn't be a surprise to learn that something like Nowhere has had an influence on queer cinema to this day in that way.
Yeah, and I want to come to you, Anahit, not specifically to you, but I'll come to you because we haven't come to you for a while. That's all right. But like the film's depiction of like sexuality and like sexual desire is like extreme. Like I think that the way that it from the off sets out that there really are kind of like no boundaries to what's going on, and it's a very fluid situation, is I think it works very, very well. But I just wanted to come to you on that. There's no way for me to come to Anahit with that question that doesn't sound like, Anahit, you are a pervert, discuss. So let's just go with it.
No, but it's true. Okay, thank you. I agree. I agree with you. I think it's really interesting thinking about that in the context of like queer cinema and just queer media generally today. I think these days queer cinema is very much marked by like the legacies of representation within media. So that idea of like queer representation, what does it do? Which has, to a certain extent, I think, sanitized it down a little bit. I'm thinking of, for example, things like Heartstopper, which are lovely and pure and I'm sure whatever, but like aren't really, that idea of like queerness as provocation, I suppose, has sort of vanished a little bit in that effort to bring it into the mainstream. And I think this film is a really, really good example of when queerness meant a kind of resistance to normativity and not just this person and this person love each other. Like in this very quite like still within like these nuclear fragmented like couples or whatever way. And so yeah, that fluidity that exists between them, the fact that like, you know, like Dark, bless him, doesn't want to be polyamorous, my God, someone free him. But there's still like the fact that he's kind of having to negotiate that, having to navigate that, and the film doesn't really like come on either side. And the fact that he also has from the very beginning of the film, these desires for other people, himself in the famous wanking montage. Yeah, that these conversations can happen at the same time, and these, like, someone's feelings and these, like, narratives around love can happen, but the desire is something that is quite different and quite separate from that, and that really is located in a quote-unquote slightly depraved place, and that's, like, a good thing. I thought that was really exciting to see, actually. It kind of goes against, I think, what some of, like, the queer discourse has become these days about, oh, you can't have kink at Pride. This is the most kink at Pride film that has ever existed, and I think that's lovely.
But it's also kind of ahead of its time, because I feel like what's kind of great about Gregg Araki is he doesn't put labels on anyone. I don't think any of the characters really label themselves, really.
Apart from Montgomery being like, I'm not gay.
Yeah, exactly. But like, he doesn't say he's not, he's something. It's like, and that's, I mean, Gregg Araki.
And also he turned out to be a giant cockroach.
Exactly.
So we don't know whether...
But like Gregg Araki famously, like I think it was John Waters had a great quote where he said, "Why I love Gregg Araki is like all the kind of Hollywood was coming out towards the 80s, towards the end of the 90s when it was coming acceptable, and then Gregg Araki went back into the closet. He just started dating women again. So like he's definitely, I think, dark is his kind of alter ego, and he would cast James Duval, and they kind of look quite similar as well. Like Araki's like a Japanese American, and they have a similar look. And he would always play this kind of sad boy who was like confused, but not really confused. He's just like he liked what he liked, So I think that is kind of one thing that maybe sets Araki apart from his peers, that he didn't really label sexuality, and he still doesn't. When people talk to him, he says, "I'm just a person who happens to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, whatever."
Yeah, he doesn't really feel like someone who's passing judgment on a scene as much as he is the one participating in it and observing it. I don't really know how it is that he achieves that. Maybe it's just that the style's so good. Like, it looks great, and I'm gay, and I'm like, this is great, so, I identify with it. But, like, he's managing to introduce nuance as well, in that this is kind of this huge hedonistic end-of-the-world party where everybody's getting off with each other, taking loads of drugs, but he's still able to tap into the fact that, like, there's a lack of emotional fulfillment and emotional intimacy, and people are kind of like not doing a good job at reaching out and taking care of each other. I think that probably marks a difference between the scene maybe in the 90s and the scene that young people will be more familiar with now, where there's so many more conversations around boundaries and consent and that kind of communication that really comes from a place of love, whereas you get characters like Dark who feel incredibly lonely because, he just doesn't want to shag everybody. That makes him a weirdo.
I was thinking while I was watching it just there that I don't know if people know, but Anahit is also an agony aunt. And I was wondering which of these polysexual characters would you love to get a letter from to like,
oh my God,
to like fix their life, because there's a lot of messed up people in here.
Yeah, I don't know. I really feel like Dark. It feels like so conflicted, and I really want to like tell him that it's okay to kind of have some, like you say, have some boundaries, damn. But they are all quite extremely messed up. But again, there's something kind of beautiful about that, while at the same time not romanticizing it. And I just don't feel you really get that much anymore. I'm trying to think who else was in the film. Oh, like the wee kid that on the drugs. Yeah. That's a bummer. Yeah, and it's really interesting actually, those kind of much darker threads that wind through the film. And how they kind of sit alongside everything else. Like
the fact, you're right in that there's no main character, but Dark is kind of our perspective character. He's who we begin and end with. And look, I can hold two truths in my heart, which is that I care a lot about Dark because there's a very like emotional honesty behind his character, in that, you can have all of this materialism in the parties and everyone's running around shagging each other, and you can still be completely like unfulfilled. And that's like depression. Again, that's a way that we would describe it differently today. But it is that this like, you're not fulfilled by all this stuff. And on the other hand, he's such a whinge. I want what he's got so badly. And it's like the fact, it's all kind of filtered through his own sense of self. He's quite a myopic character that like, he could go to a party and see his drug dealer get his head stoved in with a tin of soup and be like, oh, what a day. Oh, this is exactly the kind of thing that would happen to me.
Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah. I think as well, one of the things that's so impressive about it, just from a pure filmmaking perspective, is you have all of these messed up teens, but it's not messed up teen 1, 2, and 3. They're all like different characters, even though they might be coming at you in such a rapid fire succession that like Christina Applegate's character and James Duval's character have like they have similarity. Like these are all kind of working in the same kind of like, I'm just a teen in this crazy mixed up world, but they've all got something really specific about them, which I think is, and it's so impressive the way that the actors and the casting and the direction all kind of come together. It means that you never have this thing of like, these two are just the same person.
I also think the costumes like do such a lot of heavy lifting. You know, like everybody has like brilliant costumes. Everybody's very distinct. You know, every character stands out, which I think is something that you don't always get in cinema. You know, like they are very much archetypes, everyone. But yeah, you kind of know exactly who they are, like from the moment they speak. And it's amazing to have so many characters, but like basically everyone feels like they're a main character. They've got like a great line or something. You know, it's like they're all very memorable.
Were people just doing more favours for each other back in the day? Because how on earth has Gregg Araki done this? How's he got all these actors and all these sets and costumes? I was saying to Rosie, how's he afforded all this music? How's he just dropping 20 seconds of the Cocteau Twins and then moving on like nothing's happened? Well, this is an independent film. What's going on?
I believe it was made for $1 million, which was a lot more expensive than his early films. But I think he just said he would phone people up and just say, by the way, we don't have much money. Can I get a bit of music for a bit? You know, like that's basically, I think, what he did. He just like kind of begged and borrowed. And
I mean, we work in the grassroots and we know that that's how it works.
That's true. Also, this was the 1990s.
Yeah.
A different time.
It was a different time. Yeah, it was neoliberalism, so you could beg and borrow.
Yeah. What a time to be alive. Jamie.
Yes.
Do you have, if people have really enjoyed that, what other films from the nuclear cinema movement, or from Gregg Araki in particular, would you recommend that people go to next?
Well, I'd say the thing about Gregg Araki is he's interested in the other people from the nuclear cinema, like people like Tom Haynes or Gus Van Sant. They kind of got a bit more prestigious, you know. They would go on and make more mainstream Hollywood films, but Araki's kind of unique in that he kind of continued to just work away in this kind of weird little obsession he had. So he makes films like Kaboom, which I think is very much a kind of sequel to this almost, or like very, very much in the same vein. You know, he made A Mysterious Skin, which is like a bit more, you know, that's him working, it's an adaptation, but he's definitely dealing with like a lot of the same themes, and it definitely has that kind of mix of tones. You know, it's like incredibly brutal, but it's also kind of like life-affirming at the same time. He's kind of, I think that's one of the things about his films that are so impressive, the way he can sort of hold those two things at once, you know, like he can, you know, have a scene of an alien like vaporizing some valley girls, and then the next scene he has like a really brutal scene of a guy getting his head caved in with a like can of soup. You know, like I don't think many people can pull that off, and he's got this kind of like like I said in the intro, he's got this kind of skill of like, you know, all the bands he would listen to. You know, the Smiths is the same thing. You know, the Smiths, all their songs are like heartbreaking and depressing, but they're like also jaunty tunes, and I think he kind of is inspired by that kind of music, you know, that is both kind of like downbeat but upbeat at the same time.
Yeah.
I think it's also like what you were saying about that idea of like queer, like form as queerness and genre as queerness. It's really doing that in that there's a fluidity between kind of the tone and the genre, and it never quite settles on one or another. It made me think a lot about how people talk about like collage as like quite a queer practice, and like zine making is a queer practice, and this idea of like bringing different disparate elements together and setting them together, and it's like in that moment of like juxtapositional contrast that you can find like a queerness. And it really felt like both in the way that he kind of like edits and he cuts different characters together and different like moments together, but also in the fact that you have like an alien truly like wearing a costume. Like you can see the seams at that guy's wrists. And it's very like kooky and silly, but also really like dark in moments. And then you like move on to like these complete, like tonal shifts. And there feels like there is something like inherently queer in that like narrative structure, narrative form.
What's interesting to me is the fact that, it's through editing that he's able to kind of bring characters together who otherwise aren't really brought together. Like you have, like I said, that scene with the TV, but also, you know, there's these semi-psychic twins, and one of them shouting daddy, one of them shouting mommy, and it's sort of happening at the same time. And it's this idea that these characters are like completely disparate, and they're not really joined together by events, but they're joined together by shared sensations and emotions. And I find that super interesting. I find that's something that kind of shows up a lot more in his work. And I'm also super curious to see his new one. Because also this is like, he's got one coming out later this year with Charlie XCX. What's it called? It's called...
I Want Your Sex.
I Want Your Sex. I'm just interested to see, like, because his stuff here, again, it presents that really kind of vibrant overindulgence, that visual aesthetic that I think young people really, really appreciate, you know, that sense that you can have nostalgia for a time before you were born, but it's only because, I don't know, the ultra-rich in real life are completely dripless. So it's like, we're all kind of just like, if I had money, I would have like a giant bedroom and it would just be covered in like polka dots and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see how he might have like influenced like the sensibilities of the 90s that young people now really appreciate, and see how he maybe communicates with that in making new films.
I think he also said his new film is basically to encourage Gen Z to have more sex. Is that what he said?
That's so iconic.
So it's like, I believe it's about Cooper Hoffman is having some sort of S&M relationship with Olivia Wilde. And it's like again, so like I mean, it's a straight relationship, but like it's kinky. It's like non-normative. So like that's what he's interested in, and yeah, so he's trying to like get people banging. So
Yeah,
That's nice.
it's a noble cause.
Good on him. Seeing as we've left the 1990s behind and we are now in 2020's IP reboot hell, my final question would be, out of all those characters there, who would you want to see get a spin-off? I already have my favourites. I want to see Zero and Zoe, Mina Suvari, because I feel like they have a nice kind of like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern type vibe. They're just sort of drifting through, being like, well, that's weird. Didn't expect to see that in this toilet. Anyway, let's
is
move
it
on to
because
the
they're
next
a bit
one.
younger, they're less corrupt as well? They're actually like quite sweet, you know. They haven't sort of hit full puberty yet and become like animals.
Yeah, they've not been fully corrupted, but they've still got the cynicism of the 1990s deep in their hearts, and I appreciate that. Who would you like to see get their own little bit?
I mean, I love Dingbat, who is like Christina Applegate's character, who's just like the utter geek, who's like, you know, I hope her and what's the Scott Caan's character? I can't remember. Is it Ducky?
Ducky?
Yeah, I hope her and Ducky get together. I'd love to see like that sequel of them like married. Because like I know her from Married with Children. I grew up watching her, and she plays like Kelly Bundy as this kind of like sexy evil person, and like to see her like as like a geek with like you know, like braces and sort of being dorky is just like adorable. So yeah, she's cool.
Anahit, commission.
I want to know what happens to Rachel True's character and how she does survive in the kind of 2020s ethical non-monogamy world. But I also want to know what happens to the little bug at the end, like little Montgomery, when he scuttles off.
He's
I wanna
outta
know.
here.
Yeah, but where? That's the thing I want to know.
There's an establishing shot of Juji Fruit's party where there's two people wearing like transparent tops that say whatever. I got to see more of that. Whatever they've got going on, I want more of their little duo things.
If TikTok was around in the 90s, it'd be game over for everyone else, I tell you.
Game over.
Well, I think that's about all we've got time for, actually. It's 9:30. So, good job, everybody. Thank you all so much for sticking around. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you to Rosie for having us. Thanks to Gail for the captioning. And thank you to the GFT for all of their help and support. Queer Cinema Sundays is an amazing thing to be part of. It's so great that films like Nowhere are able to get on a screen of this size to this grand of a room. So yeah, big shout out to Queer Cinema Sundays. Keep coming to these because they're very good. Thank you, Jamie.
Cheers, Pierre.
You really saved my bacon with all your notes. Top man, as ever. Anahit, thank you very much. Sorry about the pervert thing. Ellie, you were born in 1998.
Yeah.
Disgraceful.
I know.
Yes, thank you all very much and have a good night. Goodbye.
Happy Pride.